This is episode 2 of the Unstuck Club. We're so excited to be here. I am Jodine, and I'm going to introduce you to, hand it over to Di in a moment. We tried to start again and got kicked out and had to reset everything up. So, beautiful lessons about being stuck and getting unstuck. Welcome. How are you, Di?
I'm doing really, really well. I had a wonderful January, and I'm looking forward to February.
Good. I must admit that I really felt like January was long. I usually don't say that, but it just felt like it wasn't, really felt like it wasn't ending. So don't usually get attached to time, but I'm very happy that January is over. I'm very happy to be in February.
I think, but I think that everyone's been saying that. It just seems to have felt like a really, really, really long month. And maybe because the collective thinks it's long, then it's long,
Yeah.
But it's done now, and we're now in the second month of the year, and we've had such wonderful feedback from those of you who have listened to the podcast, and we really, really appreciate it when you let us know. And we really would love it if you want to suggest some topics. A couple of people have asked me how often we're doing this. We're going to do it every 2 weeks, and then Jodine will release the episode on Mondays.
Yep.
And we're going to start bringing in guests to find out how other people get unstuck from life. And what came up for us after our first episode was around limiting beliefs, because I think that's probably the biggest thing to get unstuck from is limiting beliefs.
Yeah. Those voices in our head that somewhere along the line, we could have been told somewhere along the line, or even interpreted somewhere down the line, that we weren't good enough or smart enough, clever enough. What we were aiming for and what we dream of, it's out of our reach. And then at some point we just take it on as our truth. And I think the biggest thing is to really drill down and get to the core of what that limiting belief is, because so often we've had conversations with so many people, and we've spoken so many times, and we think we're at that limiting belief. We think we've got it. We think we know that, okay, this is really what I feel is holding me back. And then there's another layer, an even deeper layer.
I think that's probably the most frustrating thing about this journey of life, is it literally is like peeling away the layers of an onion, and you just think that you've got, this is it now. I've drilled down. I know what it is that's keeping me stuck, and then bam, up comes the next layer. And I don't think I think sometimes limiting beliefs are very much unconscious. And it's in the words that we use. And I particularly refer to parents. If you are a parent listening or watching this, is be very careful of the messages you send your children. And I know when I was growing up, I have a brother and a sister, and my dad had an overriding refrain when I was growing up, and he always used to say to us, "You kids never finish what you start." What he was referring to was, as children do, first you want to play hockey, and then you want to play netball, and then my brother wanted to play baseball, so parents, buy all the gear. And then 3 months later, you've lost interest in that and you move on to something else. That's the nature of children. They explore. And my dad used to get so frustrated. He saw it as we never saw anything through. Him constantly saying to the three of us, "You never finish what you start." I've witnessed how the three of us have struggled in our adult lives to overcome that. All of us have started things and we've really struggled to see it through. And it's only now in like my 50s and 60s that I can actually go, I'm now starting this and seeing it through. But it was something that he just said. He never really thought about how it was impacting us. Teachers, employers making comments. There can be throwaway comments, but as you said earlier, Joe, before we came on, is we take them on unconsciously. You'll never amount to anything that is said to you in a joke. It becomes part of you. And the thing is, those limiting beliefs are in the body. They are held in our cells, and they can do a lot of damage.
Absolutely. When I was younger, there's a beautiful Frank Sinatra song, "Call Me Irresponsible," and just because of the whimsical person that I am, and I am very whimsical to this day, it was my song. So very lightheartedly, everyone would sing it to me, and it's the whole theme of the song is you call me irresponsible. You're irresponsible, but I love you even though you're irresponsible. Mm. And what happened with me is the choices that I wanted to make for my life, which I've only made now at 50, I put off for so long because of the perception of that's just going to be absolutely irresponsible. So even that can even be the response to a limiting belief, is that it takes a part of you that is genuinely who you are, and people see that, label it as something else, and then the limiting belief actually it held me back for so long to explore the way that I wanted to do the coaching and how I wanted to live my life, just to be nomadic and not own anything. The perception of it is it's just this continued line of you being irresponsible. Meanwhile, it's brought me the greatest joy, and it is most aligned with my authentic self. So what's happening when we fall into this, what have we heard, and then what is it, how has it created a limiting belief? What it does is we take those traits that are so defining for who we are, and we don't use them, we tuck them away. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what really happens with that limiting belief, is that we do not step into the authenticity of who we are because of what we have been told to believe about ourselves. And then, like you're saying, guys, like it's really complex to get to the bottom of it, because we've had to tell ourselves other stories in order to survive, or in order to do our best to thrive, or our only way to find happiness along the way.
Isn't it interesting, though, that the moment you try and be like your authentic self, whether it's whimsical, and I know that for you from a very young age, you were interested in astrology and tarot, all the woo-woo things, as they're called, that's labeled irresponsible. And I just wonder how many people listening to this, have that part of themselves that they became disconnected from so long ago, because you're expected to follow a certain path, which then, as you say, becomes the limiting belief. Like, I can't follow this path because it's different and I won't succeed, and it's not the norm and it's not acceptable. And I think it takes a lot of courage to fight against that. And I honestly believe that it's one of the reasons why, especially amongst the younger generation, they are struggling so with mental health issues, because I think we're at a time when even aspects of the education system are limiting. They are forcing these kids into boxes that have been there for generations, and it's not working any longer. And the children don't have the wherewithal to basically, I think, voice it properly. So they end up on antidepressants and all the other, they labeled ADHD, this ADHD and ADD. It's like you're not conforming, so there's something wrong with you. That in itself is a hugely disempowering belief. There's something wrong with you if you're trying to live outside the norm of what is acceptable to society. And I think limiting beliefs probably are the foundation of being stuck.
I agree. I completely do. Because for me, if I look at when I work with people and we have a look at where are we stuck, right? So many people know either what they want or what they don't want. They know that. But then as soon as we start to have to put those movements into place, like, okay, this is going to be the next thing, it's so interesting because sometimes I don't hear from people again. Or I hear from them way down the line. So there's something that we've got in the coaching with Lifeology is if you buy a package, it's a lifetime. So it never expires. And it's for that very reason, because we have these glimmers of this is my limiting belief, and I understand that, right? Well, I might have just touched on it. And I know that I want to get to this point. And there's something brave that I need to do in order to get even just a little bit closer. And that little brave thing, and I'm not belittling it when I say that little brave thing, because there were things that I had to do that for other people just really seemed so simple, that for me was absolutely mammoth. And another thing that I want to talk about is I believe that life and the universe eventually just has to intervene, So, and that's what we call chaos. That's exactly what we call chaos. I honestly believe that we are set energetically to always find our worth and head towards our worthiness and head towards our happiness. And when we are off track, that's the perceived chaos, because it's this resistance between the worthiness that's so deep inside of us and life trying to tug us in that direction, and then these limiting beliefs and this low esteem that just really holds us in these stuck patterns. So it's a big thing to say I want to get unstuck, but then to actually do the brave things to start to get unstuck, that's where there needs to be so much patience with yourself, because it's genuinely that dance of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 5 steps back, because the whole time you're testing the ego part of our minds, and our voices are this really afraid victim and this really afraid child. Those are the two voices. They need to go through this process of trusting that there's this conscious, brave part of you that's going to do something different, because that's the only way we change, is to do something different. And as you do something different, all this anxiety and this resistance comes up. And it's whether we give in to that anxiety and resistance or whether we manage to push through. And when we push through, and there's a part of us that sees it's not as traumatic as I think, or the outcome could get me unstuck, we brave a little bit more and we brave a little bit more. But that initial thing that you need to do to get you unstuck, I mean, I've seen people who I care about dearly, and I am here and I'm waiting for you to return, and we make it a really small little step. But you and I are not taking away from how much bravery it takes to actually get unstuck.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, Jo, because I think for me, you are someone who, in fact, I'd say you're probably one of the few people I know who is pretty good at getting herself unstuck on your own. I mean, I know that you do have support and you do have people, and it's really important to have a network of support. But was there a defining moment in your life when you just went like, I can't do this any longer, like something has to change?
I think there's been a few, but I want to talk about business and how I got to here, because it was very, very defining. My mother had one of the top beauty schools in South Africa, and worldwide she was really well known. And she had moved on to other exciting things, and it had become it was going to be mine, right? I stepped in when it was like maybe 18 years down the line, and we were celebrating 21 or 22 years of this business being really successful. And it was just this lineage, like this expected lineage.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point when I realized this is not what I want to do. This is not what I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be fulfilled. I'm not going to be okay. You're asking me a very interesting question, because I I want to talk about traits. Actually, I want to talk about traits, because if you know that you have fundamental traits and you tap into them, then this is actually how it works. So we are all made up of 12 archetypical energies. And we talk about an archetype. When we talk about an archetype, it's a collection of traits that when you put together, it's going to create a personality type, right? And we have a different mix of how it's put together, which is the blueprint of who you are. And some are stronger than others. And there is an archetype called the pioneer. And I am very strongly the pioneer, very, very strongly the pioneer. It is consistently who I aspire to be. And that within the pioneer the pioneer doesn't get stuck. The pioneer navigates themselves all the time to something greater and to something bigger and to something better.
Okay.
So there was a part of me that I knew would always get me unstuck, and I've always gotten myself unstuck. And I think that that's a really important thing for every single person to understand, is that if you give yourself the opportunity to understand how your personality, what is the formula, what is the recipe of your personality, what defines you with your traits, which is exactly what you and I do, right? It's a beautiful combination. Like I go through that process, and I help people discover that from their birth date, what is your blueprint? And then you energetically get into the body and help actually, get things moving and unblock. So I have to credit being brave enough from a young age to be curious enough about myself to want to know. And that for me was the biggest thing. It was very hard to do. My mother no one wanted to take it over. And she did give it to someone else, and it didn't succeed. So it lasted maybe another year and a half, and then she had to close the business, which was not easy, but it was very, very fulfilling, you know. But it is within me not to allow myself to remain stuck. It's just naturally within me not to allow myself to remain stuck. Another part of the pioneer, and I hope that you're curious to see if you do have the pioneer and it is strong, because another part of the pioneer is that the pioneer is very competitive within themselves. So I am very competitive within myself. So I am always bettering myself. I'm always bettering myself, which I think just it naturally gives me the leg up. Whereas you are very strongly the dreamer, right? You really have that archetypical energy of the dreamer. So you just get to rely on that intuition, like it feels right. And that's exactly what you say to me. You get hold of me and you say to me, Joe, it feels right. I don't even question you, Di. I'm like, okay, I'm going, I'm going with it, because I am so trusting of that intuition that just guides you, that inner wisdom that just defines who you are. And one of the opportunities to grow for me, and I'm going to give one for me and one for you. What can happen with the pioneer is that the pioneer can be too scatty and just want to start so many different things and innovate so many different things. And you've had that I mean, how many times have I said to you, this is done and this is complete, and then I'm redoing it, and you've just got to go, stop, it's good, it's perfect as it is. And then you as the dreamer you can get into that space of being, creating it almost like it's idealistic. It's a dream, and now it's too big, and now I can't reach.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how we identify our limiting beliefs, is by going back into who am I, and am I managing what I believe about myself, and am I managing what I think, and is what I'm thinking true, or is it that ego voice which is just absolutely trying to protect us from never getting wounded or hurt or belittled or betrayed or any of those things again.
So it's actually then quite important to know your traits, because they in themselves can be limiting. So I know 100%, I have lots of ideas, but actually birthing them and making them happen is very challenging for me, which is why I'm so good at collaborations, because I need that support. I need people with other strengths to make something happen. So it's not necessarily a limiting belief that you've picked up. It's actually part of your makeup.
Always. A limiting
So
belief.
it's important, yeah. So it's actually important to know what kind of traits you have.
100%. When people follow my journey, or they ask me, how have you done so many of the things that I have wanted to do, from shifting my body image to really having my dream career, to living this nomad life and continuously going in this space, my response is always, it's because I discovered that is intrinsically who I am. That is instinctively who I am. And that's what I've dedicated my whole life to. My whole life now is dedicated to helping people find their traits and own who they are. And then to see that those limiting beliefs is just, it's usually someone's misperception of a trait that has been strong, or that you have tried to show the world, that has then held you back. And I want to use my tarot as an example, because I was speaking to a friend of mine yesterday, and I mentioned tarot, and she said to me, I didn't know you did tarot. And I said to her, I call it my dark web stuff, which I thought was very funny. And it's like, that's such a terrible thing to say, because it sounds like you do it so beautifully. Because how I use my tarot is, it's when we can't see into that ego space, and when we can't see into what those blockages are within those limiting beliefs, it gives me the opportunity to. So I don't use tarot in any way, shape, or form as prediction or as fortune telling or any of that kind of stuff. And she asked me why, and I said to her, well, because I don't want people to think that I am the very thing that I am, which is whimsical. Like I want people to take me seriously. And straight away I could hear that limiting belief immediately. That limiting belief is, it's someone's not going to take me seriously. So when someone says you're irresponsible when you're little, which is really stuck like glue with me, then when you're irresponsible, they don't take you seriously, right? So such a huge limiting belief for me is that people won't take me seriously. Even when I stepped into this nomadic lifestyle of mine, I remember having to try and justify the whole time that it was an absolute clear choice. It's not because I can't afford a home. It's not because I can't afford a car. It's not because I can't. It's because I have the freedom to choose and I don't want it. And it took me a while to realize, actually, hang on one second, you justify. Because the last thing you want is for anyone to think that you are irresponsible or can't be taken seriously in any way. If I didn't know that, and if I didn't know my strong traits, then I wouldn't know how to stop that. I wouldn't know how to put a cap on that.
Mm. Yeah, I think I really identify with that because for a long time I struggled to even use the word soul in my work. But I work with people at the level of their soul. It's, when I do the readings, it's like tapping into the soul level of the person. And, even saying this now, like out in public, it's like, there's part of me going, oh my God, because it's not the norm. It's not what we've grown up with. But funnily enough, if you want to be taken seriously, you actually have to own it. It is that walking your talk, but it's not an easy thing. I think anytime you go outside what the mainstream knows, it's, and even now it's like, you and I have had this discussion, are we a coach? What are we? Are we a mentor? Are we a guide? It's like, what do you call? I'm not a coach, and I tried corporate for a while to connect with corporates with this work, and it's just not who I am. It is so foreign. And I had such a lovely compliment this morning with a client. We had our first online session, and she just said, you are so easy to talk to. I can't believe how much I've shared. And that was just such a huge compliment to me, because that's what I want to do. I want people to be able to talk and share and get this stuff out of their body. I'm very big on getting these things because everything's in the cells, it's trapped in the body. So you uncover what's going on, and then I help people shift it. And that was the most beautiful compliment. It's the best compliment anyone could ever give me, to say, you are easy to talk to. But I know it's to start verbalizing this on a public platform is quite something, even after all these years. And both you and I have been in this business for a very long time.
Yeah.
And only now are we really being brave.
Absolutely. And, everyone's sitting, whoever's listening is sitting and trying to figure out where am I stuck, right? What is my limiting belief? And you've said it so beautifully, Di, because it is the undercurrent of this is actually as simple as what makes you happy. So,
yeah,
what you're doing makes you happy. How you are living makes you happy. I love you at Christmas time. I absolutely just have to share this because I literally, and I got to spend last December with you, and my nomadic plans are to spend next December with you, this coming end of the year. But I know that I'm heading home, or I'm heading to my next destination by definitely the 21st of December, because you retreat into your own world, and you spend that whole Christmas time by yourself. And everyone, very few people are okay with that for you, right? Everyone is saying, but you can't be happy. It must be lonely, right? And that's what happens to so many of us, is that we decide or we try and decide what makes us happy. And then the external voices, because they haven't had the same experiences as you, and they just don't have the same makeup as you, they don't have the same personality as you, they actually, without us realizing it, they're slowly chipping away at our belief in ourselves, and then we don't do the thing. I mean, I love that you hold on with no matter, like with everything. The neighbors are basically knocking on your door 2 days before Christmas and saying, you can't be on your own.
Yeah.
And we give in. We give in. So as you're listening to this and you're thinking, where are my limiting beliefs, or where am I feeling stuck? Where do I want to get unstuck? A really big clue to that is to just start to ask yourself, what would a different level of happiness feel like? What just genuinely makes me happy? And it doesn't have to be big life-changing things. It can be really little things, like you are in a relationship and this actually isn't the way that you want to eat, but this is how your partner wants to eat. And you can't swap how you want to eat because your partner, you're programmed to eating the same, but actually it's not making you happy. It's not making you comfortable. It's two different styles of movies that you watch and TV programs and conversations that you have. It's all those little things where you actually just get to start to ask yourself. And relationships don't have to fall apart. And you don't have to leave your job, and you don't have to relocate, and you don't have to do all of those things. Just start to just slowly ask yourself, how happy? Does this make me happy? So that you can start to identify the places where you're a little bit unstuck. I know that a lot of people sometimes say to me, Joe, the work that you do seems so overwhelming. But it's only overwhelming if you think that it's going to be like a tornado that's going to come in and toss your whole life, instead of making one brave conversation, or one day where you get up and you just do something that serves you a little bit more than it served you yesterday. That's how it works.
I know. I mean, when I send people the readings, they get their 10 or 11 pages and they go like, and I go, take it slowly. You don't have to integrate and read all of this straight off. This is going to be with you for the next year. But I think you hit on a really important thing, is very often we stay stuck because we're afraid of what the changes will do to the people around us. So we end up like, I would rather be unhappy than put my foot down and say, I'm going to cook for myself a way that nurtures and sustains me. And then you just end up, and then it becomes a vicious cycle because you become more resentful. You internalize those feelings. Then you start getting the niggly health issues. But very often we are scared to change or become unstuck because of how it's going to impact the space around you. And that's a very dangerous way to live, because eventually you are just functioning on autopilot. And I had a few people who did readings in January because it was New Year. And so many times the intuitive reading was, what's the point? I could feel nothing in the bodies. They were literally just on autopilot going through the motions. There was no sense of freedom. There was no sense of joy. There was no sense of peace. And I think I know, I mean, we're in this 8 universal. Yeah. I think it really is a time when it's like, what do I want? If you think of that beautiful line from Mary Oliver's poem, what will you do with this one wild and precious life? It's the only life. I love saying to young people, this is the youngest you'll ever be. Tomorrow we're all going to be older. So this is the youngest we're ever going to be. And when you think of it like that, it's like, oh my goodness, how much more time am I going to waste? You and I have been talking about this podcast since last year. Just start, but start small. I think the trick to getting unstuck is not to overwhelm yourself. Like, pick one thing and then go, I can do this. I can do this one small thing, and then pick something else. Start finding your voice. I think so many people have lost their own voices.
Yeah.
So they mimic other voices, what other people think. They say what they think other people will want to hear. They don't want to upset anyone. They want to conform. They want to fit in. That doesn't bring you peace, and it can be really damaging to your self-worth.
I think that's, we've been talking about in February, how we're going to, help people in a different kind of way. And I know the last thing I ever want to do is leave people kind of hanging, right? And I think that's such an important thing for us to do, is to say, we're here. you tell us, where is that where is that place? Where would you like to start to get yourself unstuck? So that we start to give that little bit of a nudge. I think that you and I have just put something together, because I know that we really trying to stick to half an hour, and it goes so quickly, which it has. And I kind of feel like we need to make that promise and that commitment now, that that this is what we are here for. We are here to help you figure out exactly what it takes to get unstuck.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's, for me, that's the challenge. I think we've just put together the February challenge. Is
yes,
what is that one little thing? Like, how do we help you to get to that first step to help you get unstuck? You obviously, and this is what we'll do. Everyone's got to understand the voices, those different, especially the custodians, which are the protective voices, and the triggers. What triggers you when you set an intention for yourself? What triggers you? What stops you from taking that next brave step? And then to get an understanding of what is it that you are trying to do, and let's navigate into that limiting belief and show people, like actually just show people that you're 100% right. It's not this massive thing. It's 2 minutes of walking, not even leaving your house if you're completely sedentary and haven't done exercise. It's one change for one meal if you aren't eating correctly. It's half an hour without your cell phone if you are addicted to technology. It's all of those tiny little steps.
I mean, I've really seen, I can't remember if I spoke in the last episode about that. After I walk the dogs in the morning, I put my headphones on and I dance. And last Friday was the one morning when I didn't. I got back to the house and I got involved with something on my phone, and then it was too late, and I was like, oh, I'll dance later on in the day, and of course I didn't. And I really noticed the difference in my day and my mindset. And that's only after, I think I've only been doing it for about 10 days. And I notice it wakes me up, it fills my body, it's beautiful music. I love the fact that because I can't do structured dance. I get too in my head, I get too stressed. I just let my body move the way it wants to. So it's like an awakening for the day, but also connecting me with my body. And I really noticed the difference when I missed a morning.
Yeah.
And that's a very short space of time. So, February challenge. What is the one thing you're going to change to start moving from stuck to unstuck?
Good. Fantastic. So we have a plan.
Yeah, we do.
Good. So we're just going to remind you, follow us, whether it's on the YouTube channel, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcast. You can reach out to us at any time. Look for Diatherton Spiral Path online, look for Jodie and Sher Lifeology online, and find us, because we really are here to help. We've created this with such beautiful intention to genuinely help as many people as we can just get unstuck, because it's worth it. It really is.
Yeah, it is.
This is amazing.
Thank you, Joe. See you next time.
Okay,
we will.
take care.
Bye.